This is the 3-liter diesel, but this is a very similar glow plug setup to other 3 liters that are in the Volkswagens and Porsches as well. And then there are similar glow plug connectors on the 4 cylinders as well. So there's 2 styles. We'll start with the pressure sensing style. So on this style here, there is actually an O-ring that goes into the inside the connector here, and then over top of that there is this kind of castle top looking connector that has the 4 tabs that connect to the connector, and then there are 2 larger pieces that actually clip onto the pressure sensor itself. So I can show you, I have an example one here. The O-ring is actually sitting in the housing and seals right at the top of the connector, and then the actual connector housing itself clips on here, and then these 2 large tabs actually key in and grab onto this little black lip of plastic right there. So what I've done is created a solution that allows you to basically purchase just this connector housing on its own, because typically what Volkswagen does right now is they sell you a harness repair kit that would allow you to actually replace this entire connector with this piece, and you have to cut the wires back and splice, and then obviously that means you're dealing with splices and electrical connections as well. So with my connector design, what you're doing is you're taking the actual uh, O-ring and you're putting it on here, so it's just sitting in there like this, and then you will grab the connector itself. There are 4 top pieces just like the other one, they just look a little bit different. This will then snap on like so, and then now you have the connector repaired. You can then take this and connect it onto the vehicle. I would recommend connecting it in a way that the 2 side tabs are facing towards the center of the vehicle or towards an area that you can access, because those are really hard to get off. But then all you have to do is just push, you'll hear a click, and then there you go, you have a solid connection. If you do need to remove this, you can hold on to these side pieces, and I recommend holding on like this and then wiggling back and forth, and that allows you to pull it back up. Otherwise, if you just yank on it, what it's going to do is break all these top tabs off, which is typically what happens on the factory one as well. So this allows you to replace it and not have to buy a whole new wiring harness and resplice everything. So now moving on to the other glow plug connector style, it looks like this. So this style is the same scenario, except for this one, the rubber connector actually breaks down over time because it's not made out of a plastic. It's actually like a thermoset rubber based material. And then what happens is it breaks down to the point where it's just like an old tire. It's cracked and dry rotted, and then turns into basically a brittle mess when you go to pull it off the car. So the wire itself is typically still intact, and underneath this heat shielding here, the wire shielding is fine as well. Same with the electrical connector. I could go and I could plug this in and it will connect just fine. Obviously, this has only been cycled once in this car, so this connector still has a lot of life left in it, but the housing itself is damaged. So I have in my hand here another example of what you would do. You could purchase this entire assembly. You would then have to cut back and crimp and put on a new one there. And typically these are pricier and hard to find. So what I've done is created a solution that allows you to buy 2 connector halves, just the housing itself, and then a piece in the middle that snaps onto the glow plug. So I'll show you that really quick with an example glow plug I have here. Here's the snap piece that actually snaps onto the glow plug itself. And then here's their replacement connector housing. So the wire will actually sit inside of this cavity here, and then obviously there's 2 halves to this, so this will be snapped together and the wire will be protected throughout. So what we'll do now is we'll repair this wire and then install this connector, and I'll show you how that all goes together. So to repair the connector, I just use some side cutters, and then what I do is I cut this plastic back around the connector. Underneath this, there is just this black shielding that's the wire itself, and then obviously the copper wire behind that, and then just this electrical connector that's crimped on. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove all of this rubber material off of this and make sure we don't damage the plastic that's underneath there. All right, so this particular one was very stubborn. In order to get the rest off, I had to take some of the shielding with it. So you can see some of the shielding right there came with it. That's pretty common just because it's molded to it. So what I'm going to do is use some Super 33 Plus from 3M. This is a higher temperature rated electrical tape. I'm just going to cut a small piece off here. So nothing super big, just very small just to cover that area. Don't want to have too much though, just because if you put too much on there, this connector housing will not work very well. So I'm going to put this on at an angle here, and then just on the end, and then make sure when I wrap it around, I'm wrapping it around super snug, just to make sure I get it as close to the wire itself, and don't make this wire super thick. So now what we'll do is we'll put on my repair kit here. We've got the snap fit piece for the front, and then the two snap halves. I will set this in here just like so, to the point that I'm as bottomed out in there as possible. It might be a little tricky to get started, but what I'll do is I'll hold the wire there and then start the second half. It might not be perfect, but that's fine. What we're going to do is just push down on the front half. And then what I do usually, you can see how this can move around in here. Let's make sure it's pushed all the way forward. That makes sure that it's actually seated within the connector itself. You might have to use your fingers to hold back on that insulation, and then you can snap the two halves together. This particular one will not make a loud snap just because there's electrical tape in there, so it closed more slowly. But you just need to make sure that these two snap fit teeth are actually past the lip on both sides of the connector housing. And then one last check that I'll do sometimes, this is just to make sure that this is seated, which it looks like this one has the issue. If I just push down on here and wiggle this, we want to see this connector actually spin, because if it doesn't spin, that means that it's not fully in that its groove that it just sits in. So I've got it spinning now. It was just a little bit off canter there. And then that's it. So now that I've got that in there and the wire is not able to move within this housing, I can go and connect this on the car, and you can hear, well, maybe you heard that. There's a nice little detent sound. I'll pull it off here and try again. You can't hear it. But there's a small little detent sound there. And that's it. All right, so there you have it. These are both solutions done and ready to go on the car. If you have any questions or comments, obviously these are custom solutions. Feel free to ask them in the comments below, or you can shoot me a message at my website. This is all linked in the description below, as well as the tools and the supplies that I've used.